Hey dreamer, tonight we're entering the world of medieval medicine, where your healthcare plan is mostly hope, a suspicious jar, and a man who owns one razor and says, "This will probably work." Not the fairy tale Middle Ages, the real one, where the air carries wet wool, smoke, sour breath, and a faint hint of panic under the surface, where medical advice travels faster than clean water, and a bad idea can become a cure if enough people nod seriously. So before you get cozy, take a second to like the video and subscribe. Your support is very much appreciated, and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what your favorite history topic is. Maybe we will dive into that topic soon. Now dim the lights, pull your blanket up like it is a protective spell, and let your shoulders drop. Tonight you are going to hear about the weirdest medieval cures people actually trusted. Would you trust a diagnosis that starts with someone checking the stars before they check on you? Would you swallow a cleansing purge because your body is apparently too damp? Would you let a barber surgeon examine you with the same hands that trimmed a beard 5 minutes ago? And would you feel safe wearing a little charm pouch of herbs and prayers, like your immune system can be negotiated with? Well, you have just been dropped into late medieval Europe, where the streets are damp, the remedies are louder than the science, and confidence is considered a medical qualification. You arrive in a world where your body is not a machine, it is a stew. A moody, bubbling stew of 4 humours, and everyone is very serious about it. Blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. If one of them is being dramatic, you're sick. If 2 of them are being dramatic, you are dying. And if all 4 are being dramatic, you are simply medieval. You try to explain you feel stressed, and they nod like, yes, your bile is gossiping again. This is the rulebook for every cure you're about to hear, so take a slow breath and prepare to be lightly simmered. Now imagine walking into a physician's chambers with a mild headache and being treated like a malfunctioning soup recipe. He squints at you like a suspicious onion. Your skin is pale, your eyes are watery, your mood is dry. Clearly your phlegm is staging a coup. This is not a joke to them. The physician consults a chart that looks like it was drawn by someone trying to invent astrology using meat. It is full of circles, arrows, and confusing Latin phrases like melancholia and choleric, and no one is quite sure if you're being diagnosed or cursed. Every personality trait, every mood swing, every weird stomach sound is blamed on the humours. Feeling lethargic, that is black bile. Impulsive, yellow bile. Crying at church again, excess phlegm. Laughing too much at the neighbour's cow accident. Clearly too much blood. The body is not a mystery to them. It is just a question of which internal fluid is being dramatic this week. The only real mystery is how to fix it without accidentally making it worse. You are classified next. Your face, your attitude, even the way you sit is added up and labelled. You're phlegmatic today, they say. Cool and moist. That explains your sleepiness and vague sense of doom. Another day you might be labelled choleric, hot and dry, which would excuse your crankiness and bold life decisions like arguing with the baker about bread size. There is comfort in this system, in its strange way. It means your suffering has a name, even if that name sounds like something that should come with a side of potatoes. Treatments, of course, depend entirely on which humour is winning the internal talent show. Too much blood. Time to let some out. Too much black bile. Try fasting, or vomiting, or sitting in a cold room thinking about your regrets. Too much phlegm. You need heat, maybe a spicy broth, maybe a hot brick under your armpit. The goal is to nudge the humours into harmony. Like a barbershop quartet where one guy keeps ruining everything with drama and phlegm. Even the seasons are part of this balancing act. Winter is cold and wet, so it increases phlegm. Summer is hot and dry, so it inflames yellow bile. Spring wakes up the blood. Autumn stirs up melancholy like a moody playlist. So treatments change not just with your symptoms, but with the weather, your age, your horoscope, and how much cheese you ate last Tuesday. The best part is, none of this feels strange to them. This is settled science. To question the humours is like questioning gravity or soup. You, on the other hand, are trying not to laugh every time someone says melancholia and stares at your knees like they hold the answer to your destiny. But this is just the beginning. Now that your internal stew has been judged, it is time for the physician to actually do something about it. You meet the local medical expert, and you can tell he is important because he owns a robe and does not carry his own bucket. He speaks calmly, like your pain is an inconvenience to his schedule, and he asks questions that feel spiritual, not practical. Have you been sad lately? Have you been warm at night? Have you recently looked at the moon with disrespect? You are hoping for something modern like a thermometer. He is hoping for something medieval like a vibe. And then he says the words that change your life. Bring me your urine. He does not ask for a sample discreetly. He announces it like he is requesting wine at a banquet. A young assistant is summoned, holding a glass flask as if it contains the future. You are herded behind a screen that provides all the privacy of a soggy bedsheet, and told to provide a generous amount. You stare into the flask, wondering how this became your life, and when you return, your personal golden potion is whisked away with reverence, like a sacred offering at the altar of guesswork. The doctor holds the flask up to the light. He squints. He rotates it. He gives it a gentle swirl. He looks at it the way a sommelier might inspect a questionable vintage. Then he begins the performance. There is a chart. Of course there is a chart. A circular masterpiece of colours and metaphors, comparing urine to everything from wine to broth to morning fog. Each shade means something. Pale yellow might suggest fear. Dark brown might imply liver problems, or possibly just a hearty meal, or possibly both. The point is not accuracy. The point is confidence. The doctor sniffs it next. You try not to panic. You try not to faint. You definitely try not to make eye contact. He nods, as if your scent confirms something ancient and troubling. Perhaps too much heat. Perhaps too much moisture. Perhaps Mercury is in a bad mood. The more you try to follow, the more it all sounds like a horoscope written by someone with a cold and a grudge. He announces that your urine is cloudy with notes of melancholy. This is apparently a condition. You are told your body is full of sadness vapours and heat rising from internal storms. The remedy, he says, will be straightforward, but first he needs to check your pulse, not to count it, just to feel it, for vibes. He places his fingers gently on your wrist and closes his eyes, as if communing with the spirit of your spleen. Then he makes another quiet hum and says something vague like your energies are misaligned. You sit there, trying to look both humble and not cursed, while he writes down your symptoms in a notebook filled with Latin doodles and what might be a crude sketch of a very disappointed kidney. He tells you that your humours are in disagreement, that your stomach is too wet, that your liver is pouting, that your brain is possibly overheated. You would like to ask how he knows this, but he is already reaching for his favourite solution. There is a short silence while he prepares to say it, like he enjoys the drama. Then finally he looks at you with that calm, helpful expression and announces your fate. Bloodletting, a good, healthy draining. Not too much, just enough to let the bad feelings leave your body through a well-timed hole. You smile politely while imagining your modern doctor's reaction to this whole interaction. But this is not your century anymore. Your wellness journey begins now. The solution to many medieval problems is simple. You have too much blood. Too much blood causes heat, anger, lust, headaches, and probably the invention of taxes. So they suggest a small opening, a careful cut, a gentle draining, like you're a wine barrel that needs to calm down. You're trying to be polite because you are a guest in this century, but you would also like to keep your blood inside your body where it belongs. The barber surgeon smiles. Do not worry, he has done this dozens of times, which is not as comforting as he thinks it is. You are led to a chair that wobbles with the haunted confidence of furniture that has seen things. The barber surgeon is whistling again. You are not sure if this is supposed to be calming, or if it is just how he prepares himself emotionally to puncture strangers. He rolls up your sleeve and taps your arm like he's getting to know it personally. His tools are laid out on the table, glinting faintly in the candlelight. You try not to make eye contact with anything sharp, especially the one that looks like it could double as a gardening tool. He selects a lancet, which is basically a fancy word for a tiny knife that has dreams of being a sword. He talks while he works, sharing stories about previous patients who only fainted a little, or who bled so beautifully he considered writing poetry about it. You nod and laugh politely, mostly to distract yourself from the part where your body is about to become slightly more hollow. He ties a cloth tightly around your upper arm to make the vein pop like it is auditioning for something. You look away. You would rather watch literally anything else. You hear the slice more than you feel it at first. Then a warm trickle. A bowl is placed beneath your arm to collect the evidence of your imbalance. You're told not to worry. The bowl will catch everything important. This is not comforting. The bowl looks like it has been used for soup. Everyone watches the blood flow like it is part of a show. The surgeon nods approvingly and mutters that your blood has a good colour, which you guess is a compliment. You start to feel a little light-headed, which is exactly what they were hoping for. Success. The heat is leaving your body. Your humours are calming down. You, however, are now wondering how many pints of blood you are allowed to donate before your personality leaves too. After a few minutes, the surgeon decides you're sufficiently drained. He applies a bit of cloth and wraps your arm like a birthday present nobody asked for. You are handed a cup of weak ale and a dry biscuit. This is your reward. The medieval version of a juice box. You chew it slowly, realizing that everything here is about balance, even the part where your body was treated like an overfilled bottle of jam. You ask if this is the only option. He says of course not. There are many tools for restoring balance. Bloodletting is just the classic. But there are other ways to encourage your humours to behave. Leeching, purging, sweating, smoking, enemas. You pause at that last word. You are not ready for that word. But he says it so casually, like it is just another Tuesday. Before you can process what is coming next, the doctor returns with a list of other suggestions. He is excited. Now that your blood has been lowered, he believes your system is open to deeper healing. You are not sure what that means. He smiles, clasps his hands, and says it is time to talk about leeches. You take a deep breath. You are not ready. But this is the path now, one drop at a time. Leeches arrive like little staff members. They are placed carefully because medieval people truly believed location mattered. If your head hurts, the leech goes near the head. If your liver is grumpy, the leech goes near the liver. It is very logical in a deeply unsettling way. The leech latches on and begins to drink, and everyone acts like this is normal and relaxing, like a spa day. You try to pretend you're not being sipped by a creature that looks like a living raisin. And just when you think it cannot get weirder, someone suggests you should also purge. The jar opens with a wet pop that sounds far too alive for your liking. Inside, a slow swirl of slug spins lazily in a puddle of water and mystery. The surgeon peers in fondly and selects one with the same care you might use to pick a wine for dinner. He lifts it with tongs, holds it to the light and nods. This one, he says, is especially good for melancholy. You try not to take that personally. The leech does not care. It is here to do its job. You are told to remove your shoe and roll up your trouser leg. The first leech is placed on your ankle, apparently a hot spot for emotional congestion. The creature hesitates, sniffing perhaps, or deciding whether you are a worthy host. Then, with grim determination, it attaches. A tiny pinch, a slow, pulsing tug. You have now entered the leech phase of your day. Everyone observes the leech's progress like it is performing a beloved solo. The apprentice leans in to take notes. The barber surgeon hums a lullaby. You stare at the far wall and attempt to leave your body spiritually. The leech, meanwhile, is thriving. It bloats with alarming speed, swelling into a glossy, satisfied pouch of what used to be you. The apprentice calls it beautiful. You call it deeply personal. When it is full, the leech detaches with a sound that makes your spine briefly leave the room. It is placed in a clay dish and given a little rest, like a performer exiting stage left after a big number. Another leech is selected. This one, they say, is for the back of the neck, where the excess heat of pride and stubbornness gathers. You nod solemnly, as if you too have long believed your confidence lives behind your ears. The process continues, each leech with its own agenda, each one placed with care, as though rearranging furniture in a room made of skin. At one point, a smaller, livelier one makes a beeline for your collarbone. You do not argue. You have accepted your new role as a human buffet. The staff seems pleased with your cooperation. You begin to wonder if medieval wellness is just learning to let nature nibble at you and then pretending it helped. Eventually the surgeon stands back and announces that you are sufficiently leeched. The tone is celebratory, like a painter finishing a masterpiece. You are wrapped in a scratchy wool blanket and guided to a fireside bench to recover. Someone hands you a biscuit. You hold it quietly, unsure if you're allowed to eat solid food after being partially drained like a wine cask with self-esteem issues. You ask if this is the end. The doctor smiles gently and says no. Of course not. Leeches are just the beginning. You must also be cleansed from within. The next phase is one of great importance. A full body rebalancing. A purge. You hear the word and something in your stomach shifts. But that is a problem for later. For now you sit by the fire, wrapped in wool, slightly hollow and vaguely proud. You have been leeched, professionally, repeatedly. Congratulations. You are now ready for the next step in your medieval wellness journey, whether you want to be or not. If sickness is imbalance, then the fastest way to balance is to get rid of something. Anything. Vomit, sweat, diarrhea, tears. Medieval medicine loves an exit strategy. You're given something bitter, something oily, something that feels like it was invented by an enemy. The goal is to make your body evacuate its bad ideas. It is like uninstalling a broken app by throwing your whole phone into a river. You are told to stay calm, and you're doing your best, but your stomach is now writing angry letters, and then comes the even bolder cousin of purging, the enema. But let us pause on that for a moment, because what you are experiencing now is the purge. You are handed a small wooden cup filled with a liquid that smells like boiled pessimism. It is thick, brown, and has the consistency of regret. You drink it because everyone is watching. They nod encouragingly, like they just gave you a warm broth instead of a chemical rebellion. Then they hand you a second cup. You stare at it, betrayed. They call this the gentle version. The strong version is reserved for people with real issues like ambition or back pain. Your stomach begins to shift, slowly at first, like a conversation starting in another room, then louder, urgent, a distant rumble, a churn, and suddenly your entire torso is hosting a revolution. You look around for guidance. The apprentice points you to a small room with a wooden bench and a hole in it. You enter with the careful shuffle of someone who now understands regret on a personal level. The door closes. Nature takes over. You lose track of time. At one point you think you blacked out and came back stronger. There is sweating. There is groaning. There is a moment where you consider writing a letter to your past self to never drink strange things from wooden cups again. When you finally emerge, you are pale, hollow, and strangely serene. The physician greets you like a returning hero. You have released the demons, he says. You're lighter now, cleaner, empty in the best way. He asks if you cried during the process. You say maybe. He beams. Good. Tears are another form of release. You are detoxing. You are purifying. You are, according to him, one step closer to celestial balance. You do not feel celestial. You feel like a pastry someone squeezed too hard, but everyone seems impressed. The apprentice offers you a cloth to wipe your forehead and a biscuit that you will absolutely not be eating. The doctor then launches into a small speech about the benefits of expulsion. Some people purge through vomiting, others through sweating. Some even bleed from the nose when the humours get particularly theatrical. He tells you about a man who once sneezed out his sorrow and was healed for 3 whole days. You try to imagine what that sounds like, but decide to protect your imagination instead. Then he pauses and says, "Of course, for more stubborn cases there is a more refined option, a method with precision, with flow, a method involving tubes. You blink slowly. You know what is coming. You feel it in your bones and in your recently evacuated everything." He smiles and gestures toward a shelf with long instruments that look like they were designed by someone who has never known peace. "Yes," he says gently, "it is time for the enema." You nod because resistance feels like it might cause more paperwork. He assures you it will be cleansing, refreshing, invigorating even. You smile back with the dead eyes of someone who has gone through too much and still has more medieval wellness ahead. The enema awaits, the journey continues, and your dignity has packed a small bag and quietly left the building. The medieval world has syringes made of metal, wood, and optimism. Liquids are poured, instructions are whispered. Your dignity leaves the room first, and the worst part is how proud everyone is afterward, as if you have just achieved wellness. You lie back and think, maybe I should have just taken a nap, but now you have a new symptom. Existential fear. Luckily, they have a cure for that too. Smoke. But let us not skip the details. You're escorted to a quiet corner where the walls seem to lean away from the scene, as if the architecture itself is embarrassed. The enema device is already waiting. It is large, suspiciously polished, and carved with what might be decorative flourishes or medieval emojis. A wooden tube, a leather bladder, a long nozzle. Everything about it says this will not be a gentle experience. But everyone around you is beaming with wellness energy. So you nod like this is fine. You are told to lie on your side, you do. You are told to relax, you try. Then you're told cheerfully that the mixture being used today is a special herbal infusion of vinegar, chamomile, sage, and for some reason, crushed garlic. You do not ask why. You no longer have the strength to question your own reality. You have already been bled, leeched, and purged. At this point, your body is basically a haunted house full of open doors. The physician approaches like a man with a mission. The assistant holds the bladder high, and gravity does the rest. You stare at the wooden beams in the ceiling and think about your childhood. There is discomfort, betrayal, and the eerie sensation of being personally invaded by salad dressing. You make a noise that cannot be translated. The assistant nods solemnly. Yes, that means it is working. Time stretches. You are informed that you must retain the fluid for a few minutes to allow it to do its magical work. This apparently separates the strong from the weak. You grip the edge of the cot with the quiet intensity of a monk facing temptation. You have never concentrated this hard on not moving in your life. Finally, the moment comes to release. The bucket is provided. The assistant remains nearby, humming softly, which is somehow worse than anything else. When it is over, they treat you like a hero returning from battle. You're cleaned, wrapped in another wool blanket, and handed a clay cup of broth. They say your body has been reborn. You feel like your organs just filed for divorce. The physician pats your shoulder and tells you with deep sincerity that enemas are among the highest forms of healing. They restore the inner balance. They reset the very soul. You nod slowly, unsure whether to laugh or cry or just evaporate. The assistant asks if you would like another in a few days. You manage a tight smile that communicates both your gratitude and your deep internal scream. Then you're left to rest by the fire, once again, with that now familiar sensation of being hollowed out for health. But there is no time to wallow. No sooner have you begun to reassemble your sense of self than the next remedy is introduced. A cleansing of a different kind, a new approach to fighting imbalance. You look toward the hearth, already flickering with flame, and realize that in medieval medicine, healing does not stop at your skin. It enters the lungs, whether you like it or not. You are told sickness travels in bad air. So the response is obvious. Make the air smell different. People burn herbs, wood, and whatever is available, filling rooms with thick, scented smoke that makes your eyes water and your soul feel lightly toasted. It is like trying to disinfect your house by aggressively roasting it. Some carry pomanders, little balls filled with spices, held up to the nose like a portable filter for the apocalypse. You breathe carefully because the smoke is intense, and you realize medieval wellness is mostly about competing smells. You are led into what they call a cleansing chamber. It looks like a kitchen, a chapel, and a forest floor had a confusing argument. Sage is smouldering in a clay bowl near the hearth. Bundles of dried rosemary are shoved into the fire until they pop and crackle like angry broomsticks. There are sticks of incense stuck into loaves of bread to keep them upright. Someone has added dried juniper to the mix. The room now smells like a very religious pine tree. A woman in 3 shawls and 1 opinionated bonnet wafts the smoke toward your face with a feather. She tells you it will open your pores, clear your thoughts, and frighten away corrupted air spirits. You are unsure how to feel about that sentence, mostly because your lungs are now full of rosemary steam and your tongue tastes like burnt furniture. You cough gently. She beams. It is working. There is no formal method. They just keep burning things and waving them near your head like they are trying to exorcise a casserole. Someone sprinkles vinegar onto a hot brick, releasing a sharp cloud that makes your eyebrows fold inward. You're handed a small cloth pouch and told to keep it near your heart. It contains crushed cloves, garlic, and something labelled angel's hair, which is either a poetic name for fennel or the worst souvenir ever. You step outside for air only to find the entire village has joined in. Doors are flung open, smoke spills from windows, people are waving bundles of herbs at each other like they are casting spells in a very sneezy wizard duel. A child runs past holding a burning sprig of thyme like a torch. A man nearby shouts at his chimney, as though it personally invited the plague. The town reeks of effort and basil. Even travel requires preparation. Travellers wear long beak like masks stuffed with herbs, creating a kind of personal incense chamber. The idea is to inhale only good smells and none of the bad ones. You spot one such mask hanging on a hook. It looks like something a crow would wear to a costume party in hell. You ask if you are meant to wear one. They laugh. Not yet. That is only for serious cases. Eventually the air becomes so thick with scent that you are no longer sure whether you feel better or just heavily seasoned. You smell like a winter stew, a spicy one. Everyone claps you on the back and tells you that your lungs have been purified, your aura polished, and your internal winds redirected. You do not remember asking for any of that. But apparently your wellness has improved. You're given a pomander to hang around your neck, a pouch to pin to your sleeve, and instructions not to breathe deeply near strangers, which honestly is fair advice in any century. You're told your humours should feel lighter now. They do. Possibly because half your oxygen has been replaced with thyme smoke. But if the smoke did not fully do the job, do not worry. There is another solution. You're now invited to meet the apothecary, and he has something much more exciting in a jar. You step into the apothecary and the air changes. It smells like dried flowers, sharp resins, honey and secrets. Shelves are packed with powders, roots, syrups, and chunks of things that used to be alive. The apothecary speaks softly, like a bartender for your organs. What seems to be the trouble, friend? You say you feel weak, and he nods like, yes, weakness is very popular this season. Then he offers you the medieval dream product, a cure for everything. It has a name that sounds comforting. Theriac, or treacle, and it is about to become your whole personality. He pulls down a thick glass jar with a cork so tight it looks like it was sealed by divine contract. Inside is a dense, dark paste that glistens like tar and smells faintly of cinnamon, earth, and childhood trauma. This, he says, is theriac, the good stuff, the real deal. The kind once used by emperors and popes and anyone rich enough to survive it. He scoops out a portion with a little wooden spoon and offers it to you with the gentle reverence of a man presenting a holy relic or a mild dare. You taste it. You were expecting something vaguely herbal. Instead, it hits your tongue like spiced tree sap dipped in regret. It is sweet, yes, but also gritty and oddly chewy, like someone tried to make licorice out of grave dirt. You chew slowly while the apothecary watches proudly. He says it contains over 60 ingredients. You nod politely because you cannot speak, and also because your mouth is still processing at least 12 of those ingredients. He explains that Theriac can treat everything: fevers, fatigue, snake bites, heartbreak, bad dreams, and neighbours who look at you wrong. It contains opium, which explains why some people love it and some people simply lie down after eating it and forget to wake up on time. It also contains saffron, honey, myrrh, viper flesh, and probably a few philosophical concepts. It is a paste made of confidence. You feel both healed and betrayed. The apothecary guides you around the shop, pointing out other treasures: dried lizards for lung complaints, powdered horn for male vitality, crushed pearls for anxiety, assuming you are rich and deeply confused. He lifts a jar of preserved rose petals and claims they improved the mood. He opens a drawer labelled unicorn bone and quickly closes it again before questions are asked. You see a dusty bottle marked mummy powder and decide you do not need to know what that one does. Every shelf in the shop is a gamble between healing and historical misjudgment. At one point he opens a tin and holds it under your nose. It smells like burnt raisins and vinegar. Good for the memory, he says. You try to remember what your life was like before this moment. You cannot. It is working. He offers to mix you a custom tonic. You watch as he sprinkles various powders into a clay bowl with dramatic flair. There is no measuring, just confidence and hope. A little bark for circulation, a few seeds for courage, a pinch of something that looks like crushed beetles but is probably optimism. He stirs it all together with a stick and pours it into a small bottle with a wax seal. You are told to take one sip every morning and absolutely not to question anything that happens afterward. You thank him, your hands full of mystery powders and ancient syrup. He nods, already moving to the next customer, who's asking whether melted amber can fix their seasonal sadness. You step outside, blinking into the daylight, a little stickier than before and unsure whether you're healed or simply in a gentle trance. But as effective as Theriac may be, it is not enough for some. If you're truly serious about protecting your body from corruption, the apothecary recommends something stronger, something sacred. It is time to meet the saints, or at least the pieces of them. Now you enter the world of sacred healing, where relics are the original wellness influences. A scrap of cloth, a bone fragment, a vial of something claimed to be holy. People touch them, kiss them, and whisper prayers with the focus of someone refreshing an email they desperately need. You're offered a charm to wear because prevention matters. It is the medieval version of carrying hand sanitizer, except the sanitizer is faith and the bottle is your neck. You try not to judge because modern people also believe in some wild stuff, like detox teas. And speaking of detox, someone suggests another classic medieval cure: sweat. But before you can sweat, you must believe. The priest ushers you into a small room behind the church, a place where the truly valuable relics are stored, not the ones displayed in shiny cases for pilgrims to admire. These are the ones reserved for those who are desperate, wealthy, or both. The air is thick with incense, beeswax, and the gentle panic of someone realizing they might be about to touch a saint's toenail. The relics are arranged with care, tiny bones in silver cases, teeth in crystal vials, bits of cloth, supposedly from robes worn by martyrs, carefully folded and placed in ornate wooden boxes. There is even a splinter of wood that is definitely, absolutely without question from the true cross. Probably. Maybe. You're asked not to think too hard about it. Faith, after all, is about not asking for receipts. You are guided to kneel before a reliquary shaped like a small house, complete with a glass window where a knuckle bone rests on red velvet. The priest murmurs a blessing and gestures for you to touch it. You hesitate, not because it is a bone, but because you're not sure what you are agreeing to. Healing, protection, a subscription to divine favour. You reach out slowly, touch the glass, and immediately feel warm. But that might just be from the room, which is somehow both sacred and suspiciously humid. The priest hands you a relic badge. It is made of tin and shaped like a little scallop shell. It has been pressed against a holy object and is now your portable miracle. You are told to wear it on your chest, near your heart, and absolutely not to sell it at the market. Not again. The last guy who did that had a very bad week. You meet other relics too. A vial of what might be blood that turns to powder when shaken. A strip of linen stained with something that everyone agrees is sacred and no one wants to test. A statue that weeps on Thursdays. You listen quietly as the stories are told. How one relic cured a fever. How another helped a child walk again. How a third was carried into battle and deflected an arrow, though the man carrying it did not survive. You leave the room with pockets full of tiny holy souvenirs. You have enough spiritual protection to open a very uncomfortable gift shop, and yet you are still told not to let your guard down. Relics help, but the body must also be cleansed in other ways. You're still full of invisible dangers, humours that sulk and toxins that lurk. Which is why the next step is entirely logical. If the saints cannot fully protect you, maybe your paws can. You are led to a warm, smoky room and told that the time has come to sweat it all out. Welcome to the medieval spa. Blankets, fire, and whatever hope smells like when it starts to burn. You're encouraged to sweat out illness, because why suffer quietly when you can suffer damp? They wrap you in blankets, place you near a fire, and serve hot drinks that taste like boiled regret. The goal is to open your pores and let sickness escape like a tiny demon fleeing a house party. You sit there slowly roasting, listening to the crackle of the fire and the soft wheeze of your own patience. You start to understand why medieval people loved baths in theory but feared them in practice. Too much water could be dangerous. Too much heat could be dangerous. Everything is dangerous. And then someone brings up the strongest solution of all. Fire on your skin. But first, more blankets. Always more blankets. You are bundled tighter than a leftover pastry, head poking out, sweat trickling from places you did not know could trickle. They hand you another mug of hot herb water and encourage you to breathe deeply. You try. The air is thick with steam mugwort and the slow unravelling of your willpower. Your pores begin to open. So do your doubts. You're told this is normal. The herbalist monitors your face closely. Too pale and she adds more heat. Too flushed and she fans you briefly before deciding you are being dramatic. She adds another log to the fire and fluffs the wool around your shoulders. You try to speak, but the wool absorbs most of your words. She tells you to stay still, or the illness might run back inside. Sweating is not just a cure, it is a ritual. There is a rhythm to it. You sweat, you sip, you sweat more. You're encouraged to think good thoughts, to keep your soul aligned with the direction of the heat. You're not sure which direction that is. Someone sings in the corner. It might be a healing chant. It might be a lullaby. It might be someone slowly losing their grip. You feel a kinship either way. At one point, you try to escape. Just casually, maybe sit up for a bit, but hands appear and gently press you back down, like a quilted hostage. You are told the toxins are almost gone. You did not know you had toxins. Now you are being boiled to release them. Your skin feels like it is thinking about peeling off. Your knees are sweating. Your earlobes are sweating. Your spirit is sweating. Eventually they let you cool down. Not with fresh air, but with a damp cloth soaked in something that smells like forest floor and forgotten responsibility. It is dabbed onto your forehead with great reverence. You are praised for your strength. You are told you did very well. You feel like a cooked carrot with dreams. The herbalist says your humours have been softened. Your insides are now like warm soup. This is apparently ideal. You are helped out of the cocoon of wool, one sticky layer at a time. The room swims around you. You are handed a dry shift and a fresh cup of something you will absolutely not be drinking. Your feet touch the cool stone floor and you whisper a thank you to gravity. You are now considered cleansed, enlightened by heat, purified by damp. You shuffle away, limp but respected. You have sweat like a true medieval patient. And now, as your skin continues to radiate faint disappointment, you're told there are still more treatments. One reserved for the most serious cases, the ones that do not respond to herbs or blankets or prayers. It is time to meet the metal and the man who wields it. Cautery is exactly what it sounds like. A heated tool pressed to flesh to stop bleeding, close wounds, or persuade a stubborn illness to leave out of fear. You watch the iron being warmed and you start to miss the leeches. At least leeches do not come with smoke. The practitioner speaks in a calm voice, like this is routine. You consider fainting politely, but everyone seems busy. The hot iron touches down and your soul briefly exits your body to take a walk. When it returns, you are told you look healthier. Incredible. And now, because the medieval world has no chill, they mention drilling a hole in your head. But let us linger for a moment with the iron. Because this is not just a treatment, this is a statement. When they bring out the cautery rod, they are not just trying to cure you. They are showing you that healing can be loud, smoky, and mildly traumatic. The iron is heated in a brazier until it glows the colour of decisions you cannot take back. The surgeon lifts it up, nods thoughtfully, and asks someone to hold your shoulders in place. You are not asked if you consent. You are simply encouraged not to move too much. They tell you this is for your own good, that the heat will drive out the corruption, that your bad humours will flee the body like demons being evicted. You would like to believe them, but your brain is busy composing a small opera of fear. You smell the iron before it touches you, that sharp metallic tang of forged despair. Then it presses against the skin and your understanding of pain evolves. There is no screaming, not because it does not hurt, but because your breath has left the building. It is a deep, quiet agony, the kind that happens in silence and gets remembered for decades. They hold it in place for only a second or two, but time bends, the second stretches out, becomes a paragraph of suffering, a short novel of regret. Then it is over. The rod is withdrawn. Your skin hisses. Your spirit whimpers. They wrap the wound quickly with a poultice soaked in wine and herbs, something to prevent infection, something to distract you. You barely hear the words of comfort. Your body is buzzing. Your eyes are glassy. Your dignity is on vacation. But everyone around you looks satisfied. The surgeon pats you on the head like a brave little casserole. You have been cauterized. You have passed the test. They say the pain means it is working, that the worse it feels, the better the results, and that the body will remember not to be ill in that spot again. You think that is probably true. You cannot imagine any part of your body wanting to go through that twice. Some patients come back for multiple sessions, chronic problems, they say, persistent aches, the kind that only fire can reason with. Others swear by it as a preventative measure, like medieval flu shots, but with more sizzling. You overhear someone casually asking if they can get their back done too, just in case. You quietly begin planning your escape. But before you can slip away, the physician catches your eye and says he has another option for you. For certain kinds of pressure, for head pains, for moods that linger like fog, it is an ancient procedure. Very delicate, very precise. Maybe something's trapped in your skull, so they propose opening a little door. Trepanation has ancient roots and shows up in medieval surgical practice too. It is presented as careful and controlled, which is nice, but the idea is still, we will make a hole in your head. You sit very still and think about your life choices, all of them, especially the one where you did not stay in your own century. And just when you think medieval cures cannot get stranger, someone offers something softer, a poultice, which is medieval for we are going to smear a paste on it. But before we get to the soothing part, you must first survive the concept of skull carpentry. The physician assures you that this is only done in extreme cases, like persistent migraines, or melancholy that refuses to be politely drained from the ankles. He says it is a very specific solution for very specific problems. You nod, mostly because you are afraid that shaking your head might be interpreted as a symptom. The tool for trepanation is horrifyingly simple. A little hand drill, a chisel, maybe a small mallet. If you are lucky, they will use a round saw. If you are very lucky, someone will be holding your head. You're told to sit upright and stay calm. There is a strong emphasis on staying calm. They say it like it is easy, like it is normal to sit quietly while a stranger peels a circle out of your skull like an artisanal cheese sample. You are given wine beforehand, not for sanitation, just to help you not scream your feelings. If you are high status, maybe you get some mandrake root or poppy syrup. If you are low status, they just sing near you and hope that distracts you from the crunching. The surgeon marks the spot carefully, like he's about to hang a family portrait on your forehead. Then he begins. The pressure is immediate, a scraping sensation followed by a popping one, and then a moment where your thoughts feel loose. They say this is normal. They say the spirits are being released. You briefly consider becoming one of them. The onlookers murmur prayers. One of them faints. You envy them. The hole is not large, just enough to provide relief, they say, as if your brain just needed a tiny skylight to feel less stuffy. Once the bone circle is removed, they inspect it like a prize. Sometimes they keep it. Sometimes they give it back to you, wrapped in linen as a souvenir. You decline, politely. The wound is packed with herbs, honey, or moss. Because if you're going to be exposed to the elements, you may as well smell nice. They place a cap or a bandage over your head and recommend rest, and fluids, and perhaps not thinking too hard for a few days. You nod again, slowly. Your head feels lighter, not metaphorically, literally. You are congratulated. You have been trepanned. You are now spiritually ventilated. You lie down, eyes wide open, and think about how this was somehow seen as an upgrade from cautery, and how this was, in someone's opinion, delicate care. But the next remedy will not involve holes, or heat, or spirits. It will involve paste, crushed herbs, maybe bread, something that squishes gently onto the skin and smells like it believes in natural healing. A poultice. Your next medieval adventure comes with texture. A poultice is comfort food for your skin. Herbs mixed with fat or bread or wine, crushed and slapped onto the problem like a healing lasagna. Sometimes it is soothing, sometimes it burns, sometimes it smells like a swamp that learned to read. People apply poultices for swelling, wounds, and pain, trusting that the right mixture will pull out corruption. You can almost see the logic. Almost. And then someone suggests adding something stronger, something from the animal world. Because nothing says health like farm ingredients used off-label. It begins with the mortar and pestle. Someone starts grinding herbs like they are angry at a salad. Leaves, roots, a splash of vinegar, a whisper of honey, and something that looks suspiciously like mashed barley. Then comes the fat. Animal fat, thick and glossy, scooped into the bowl like lumpy glue. The mixture turns from crumbly to paste. It is warm. It is fragrant. It is deeply upsetting. They apply it with a wooden spatula that probably doubles as a cooking tool. You are told to hold still while they spread it on your chest. The poultice is hot, squishy, and somehow heavier than expected. It settles over your skin like a soggy quilt made by someone with no boundaries. You are wrapped again in cloth to keep the heat in, which means you're now wearing a compressed burrito. You are told not to move for at least an hour, preferably 2. As the paste cools, it hardens slightly. Your skin begins to itch. You mention this, and they tell you that means it is working. You mention the smell, and they nod wisely. That means it is drawing out the illness. You mention that you feel like you are marinating. They ignore you. The important thing is that the humours are being coaxed toward the surface, like shy woodland creatures. Different poultices are used for different ailments. Onion and garlic for chest congestion, mustard seed for joint pain, bread and milk for boils, clay for mysterious lumps, wine-soaked crumbs for abscesses and drama. Sometimes a raw egg is added, sometimes ashes, sometimes something that used to live in a river. If it can be mashed and stuck to a body, someone has tried it. Success is measured by how loudly the patient groans and how impressed the neighbours are. If the first round does not work, they simply make another one, warmer this time, with more vinegar, or possibly less. No one really knows. They rely on instinct, tradition, and how the stars looked last Thursday. Some poultices are left on overnight. You sleep, if you can, while covered in what feels like compost with a mission. You wake up crusted, itchy, and slightly herbal. But better. Maybe. If not, there is always the next variation, with goat butter. The theory is simple. Illness is something inside that wants to come out. The poultice pulls, it absorbs, it warms, it whispers. You imagine your pain floating up into the paste like steam rising from bad decisions. You want to believe it, you really do, but mostly you are focused on how your shoulder now smells like pickled sadness. Eventually the poultice is peeled away. It comes off with a wet squelch and the solemnity of a medical miracle. Everyone leans in to inspect the residue. There are nods. The corruption is gone. The paste has done its work. You're allowed to stretch again, even though one arm no longer trusts the process. You're told that you are healing well, that your body responded beautifully, that with a few more applications you will be as balanced as a well-rotated turnip. You thank them. You mean it. Sort of. But before you can escape into dry clothing and silence, someone appears holding a small bucket. Inside is something damp and blinking. The next treatment, they explain, will involve a pigeon, and your understanding of health is about to enter a new chapter entirely. In medieval remedies, animals are not just food or labour, they are medicine supplies with legs. Fat, bile, bones, milk, even feathers all have a role in some recipe somewhere. The line between kitchen, stable and clinic is extremely blurry. You hear advice that sounds like a dare. Put this on your skin. Drink that. Wear this. You nod like a polite time traveller while thinking, in my century we at least pretend not to be like this. Then the conversation turns to the biggest medieval fear of all, plague, and the cures get truly unhinged. But first, more animals. Because before you reach full-blown plague panic, you must first appreciate how many parts of a barnyard can be medically repurposed. Cow dung mixed with barley was once recommended for certain rashes. Pig fat was applied to wounds. Goat milk was used to soften skin and occasionally to rinse out eyes. Someone hands you a poultice made with lard, sage, and what is gently described as essence of rooster. You don't ask what that means. You don't want to know. The fat of animals is prized for its warmth and richness. It is the carrier of choice for many healing herbs. A dollop of sheep tallow can be combined with crushed garlic and smeared on a swollen ankle with alarming enthusiasm. You're told this will draw out the heat. You are not entirely sure whether they mean metaphorical heat, infection, or a grudge your ankle has been holding on to since spring. Then there are bones, ground into powder, stirred into drinks, or worn around the neck to absorb evil. A chicken bone tied to the wrist is said to protect against sudden fits of rage. A dog's tooth in a pouch under the pillow can prevent bad dreams, or cause them, depending on the dog. You are given a rabbit's foot dipped in vinegar and told to hold it during storms. For what purpose? No one explains. But they all nod like this makes sense. Bile is also popular. Animal bile, collected with care and stored in jars, is believed to have cleansing properties. It is mixed with honey or wine and taken by the spoonful to cleanse the liver or scare away intestinal worms. You are shown a sample. It looks like melted sadness and smells like betrayal. You are not offered any, yet. You pretend to look disappointed. Milk and butter are more familiar, but still strange in this context. Cow's milk with herbs is used to bathe sore eyes. Donkey milk is praised for its gentleness. Fermented mare's milk is said to help digestion if you can keep it down. Butter is not just for eating. It is rubbed into the skin, smeared on the chest, and occasionally used to seal a bandage. Someone insists it also soothes heartbreak. You're not sure if they mean the physical kind or just emotional damage in general. Even feathers are dragged into this. Pigeon feathers are burnt and used in powders. Rooster feathers are tied to wounds. Owl feathers are avoided. No one wants owl energy near a sick bed. That's asking for trouble. You nod like this is the most natural thing in the world. You no longer know what reality is. Eventually someone appears holding a pigeon. A live one. It blinks at you. You blink back. The healer explains that pigeons are very good at drawing out plague energy, especially when pressed against certain parts of the body. You would laugh, but they are already preparing a blanket, because now the talk of plague has begun in earnest, and when the Black Death shows up, medical logic is thrown directly out the window. Along with your dignity, it is time to fight poison with poultry. Welcome to medieval plague medicine. May the feathers be in your favour. The moment plague enters the story, the whole town changes. People speak in whispers. They watch their neighbours. They smell the air like it is suspicious. Learned doctors write treatises. Folk healers offer charms. Everyone agrees on one thing. Something bad is in the body, and it must be drawn out. This is where medieval cures become both tragic and strangely creative. You are told to avoid bad air, keep your heart cheerful, and absolutely do not panic, which is adorable advice considering the situation. You're no longer just a person. You're now a potential plague vector, a moving vessel of doom, and possibly the reason someone down the road coughed twice during Vespers. People begin to look at you sideways. They cross themselves when you sneeze, and if you so much as break a sweat, someone starts lighting rosemary and whispering about early symptoms. You try to stay calm. But calm is in short supply when every crow feels like an omen, and every breeze smells like mortality. The physicians are divided. Some believe the plague is spread by bad air. Others insist it is divine punishment. A few blame Saturn. You try not to take it personally that your fate may rest in the hands of a moody planet. Doctors arrive in town with beaked masks stuffed with herbs, poking at patients like floral-scented crows. Their robes are waxed against disease, their eyes hidden behind glass, their voices muffled and surreal. They look less like healers and more like performance artists in a tragedy no one asked to attend. People wear charms and talismans with increasing urgency. Amber beads, lead crosses, bits of dried toad strung on cord. Anything that might convince fate to look elsewhere. They carry pomanders filled with cloves and lavender. They burn sage, juniper, resin, and desperation. Someone hangs a necklace of onions around your neck. Someone else insists you eat only sour foods. Someone else offers a song, a very long, off-key, medically ambitious song. You smile, you nod, you chew the onion. The mood in town swings wildly. Some people laugh too loudly. Others sit silently for hours staring into the distance like they are trying to memorize the clouds. A few decide this is the best time to confess everything. Secrets come out with the same urgency as symptoms, affairs, stolen bread. Who really burned that haystack last spring? It turns out fear is excellent for honesty. The advice continues to pour in. Do not bathe too often, or you'll open your pores to evil. Bathe frequently to remove sins. Eat garlic. Drink vinegar. Do not drink vinegar, it attracts bad humours. Avoid people. Stay with family. Pray more. Pray differently. Try not to die. Above all, stay cheerful. A joyful heart is plague-proof, according to at least 3 pamphlets and 1 enthusiastic monk. You start to believe everything and nothing at once. You clutch a bundle of herbs. You wipe your door with vinegar. You cough into your elbow, which earns you a blessing and a suspicious squint. You sleep with your head higher than your feet, because someone swore it helps. You dream of feathers, of bells, of masks, and every morning you check yourself for swellings, as if you are waiting for your own plot twist. But plague medicine is just getting started. When smells and saints fail, when songs and prayers lose their charm, the people turn to nature. Specifically to birds, because of course they do. You are introduced to a method meant to draw poison from plague swellings, those painful lumps called buboes. The idea is simple in the way nightmares are simple. Take a live chicken, press its rear end against the swelling, and let it pull the badness out. People believed the chicken would absorb the corruption and die, like a feathery sponge for doom. You stare at the chicken. The chicken stares back with the expression of someone trapped in someone else's bad plan. And you realize medieval medicine is often about transferring fear into something else. Which leads naturally to the next cure, pigeons, Because of course. It begins with the healer explaining the theory in a tone that suggests this is perfectly normal behavior for both humans and chickens. The logic is that a living creature, full of vitality and innocent of sin, can draw out the pestilence like a magnet pulls iron. The closer the contact, the more effective the transference, preferably directly against the bubo, preferably featherless, preferably without too much squirming from either party. You're reassured this is a time-tested remedy. By time-tested, they mean once written down by a man in a hat who probably never tried it himself. The chicken is brought in with a reverence usually reserved for royal guests or ancient relics. Its feathers are parted, its rear presented like a holy object, and its mission explained in hushed tones. You are the host, it is the guest. Together, you will attempt a medical miracle via unwanted proximity. The chicken is placed gently onto the swelling, or more accurately applied, as if it is a salve that occasionally flaps. You try to remain still, you try to breathe evenly. You try not to imagine the Yelp review this chicken would leave if it could type. The healer closes their eyes as if meditating. A few onlookers murmur encouragements. Someone blesses the bird. You think about your ancestors, who survived things like this long enough to produce you, and you wonder if they are watching this from the afterlife with their heads in their ghost hands. The chicken emits a noise that sounds like resignation. Your bubo throbs in time with your dignity slowly exiting your body. Eventually the chicken is lifted away and examined with clinical curiosity. If it looks sluggish, if it ruffles its feathers in an offended manner, if it seems vaguely annoyed with existence, the healer nods. Excellent. It has absorbed the sickness. The treatment was successful. The fact that you still feel like death is not relevant. Sometimes the chicken is released into the wild, its noble work complete. Other times, it is quietly culled to prevent recontamination. You are told to rest, drink something bitter, and consider another session. You ask how many chickens it takes to fully recover. The answer is unclear, but you suspect the number is somewhere between concerning and poultry genocide. 1 per swelling. Possibly more if the first chicken was emotionally unavailable. You ask politely if there is any other treatment, anything that does not involve livestock being pressed against your skin. The healer nods. Yes, there is a gentler option. Pigeons. But before we go there, you should know this was not a back-alley superstition. The chicken treatment appears in real medieval medical texts, endorsed by learned men who spoke Latin and owned multiple candles. It was serious work, it was procedure. And if a patient died afterward, the logic was never that the method was flawed. It was simply too late. The corruption was too deep. The chicken could only do so much. As the bird is carried away, you feel a strange respect. It tried. It gave everything. It did not ask for this life, but it showed up. You say thank you. The chicken blinks. It is the closest thing to closure you will get. But your healing journey is far from over. Because while chickens may steal the show, pigeons are waiting in the wings, slightly smaller, slightly less opinionated, and just as committed to your medieval well-being. Pigeons show up in medical recipes and practices in ways that make you look at modern pet owners with fresh respect. Sometimes the advice is to use a freshly killed pigeon as a comforting application, sometimes as a way to draw out illness. The theory is that life and heat can pull sickness away, like a magnet made of feathers. You imagine explaining this to a modern emergency room staff member, and you laugh quietly into your sleeve. The medieval practitioner is very serious. He places the bird as instructed, and you lie there trying to relax while a pigeon participates in your wellness journey. Then someone suggests something even more symbolic: amulets. This time the pigeon is not alive. It has been prepared, not cooked exactly, more like repurposed. A still warm bird, split and opened, is gently pressed to your chest. The healer's hands are reverent. You are less so. It is not the most painful moment of your plague journey, but it may be the most emotionally complicated. You are grieving the pigeon on its behalf, and also for yourself. The idea behind this, you are told, is transference, that the pestilence will move from your body into the flesh of the bird, that heat will attract heat, that the energy of the disease will be absorbed by something recently living, and therefore more attractive to illness. It is the medieval version of setting a decoy on fire so the enemy shoots at the wrong target. You lie there, still and unblinking, while your new pigeon friend soaks up your symptoms. There is no scientific explanation, but there is confidence, a lot of confidence, which in medieval times is as good as evidence. The healer checks your pulse, nods. The pigeon has done its job. You ask quietly what happens to the pigeon now. The answer depends. Some bury it, some burn it, some, disturbingly, use parts of it in other remedies. You pretend not to hear that last one. You are doing your best to be respectful, but your modern immune system is sending signals of confusion. It is doing paperwork behind your eyes. There is a pigeon on your body. There are herbs in the air. Somewhere in the distance, a chicken clucks with judgment. In some recipes, the bird is not applied whole, but rendered down into parts. Pigeon fat for warmth, pigeon blood for vigour, pigeon droppings for certain salves you wish you never learned about. It is deeply holistic. Nothing wasted. Every part of the bird is invited to the healing party, whether it wants to come or not. The healer offers you something to drink, something bitter, in a chipped wooden cup with floating bits you do not investigate. You drink it politely while the pigeon is removed and placed aside with gentle ceremony. You feel light-headed, which could be healing, or plague, or dehydration, or just the crushing realization that at least 3 birds have now been involved in your health plan today, and not one of them asked for your consent. You sit up slowly. The healer offers a blessing. The assistant gathers feathers. Someone else lights more herbs. You look around and realize you have stopped questioning the process. Somewhere along the line, you accepted that this is the system, that birds are medicine, that feathers are fate. And just when you think you have reached the peak of symbolic healing, someone offers a new idea, something personal, something portable, a protective charm. Because when birds and smoke and prayers are not enough, you may want to wear your luck. Now the cure becomes portable. You are given a small bundle to wear. Maybe herbs, maybe a prayer, maybe a scrap of writing sealed tight. It sits against your skin like a tiny promise. The idea is that words and objects can defend you, like a medieval firewall. People hang charms in homes, carry them in pockets, and pin them to clothing. It is comforting in its own way, even if you suspect it works mostly by making people feel less helpless. And honestly, feeling less helpless is nothing. Still, the medieval world does not stop at amulets. It escalates. Sometimes the charm includes a very unexpected ingredient, a toad. But first, your current amulet. It is presented with a level of gravity usually reserved for wedding rings or ancient scrolls. The healer hands it to you on a piece of linen, careful not to touch it too much, because that might weaken the charm. You hold it in your palm. It smells faintly of dried lavender, beeswax, and possibly goat. You are told not to open it. The magic works better sealed. You nod solemnly, like you understand this logic, and try not to imagine the thing unravelling in your sleep and summoning medieval malware directly into your dreams. Some amulets contain written prayers, sometimes in Latin, sometimes in a local dialect, sometimes in handwriting so shaky it looks like the scribe was being jostled by a mild earthquake. The more exotic the script, the stronger the protection. One charm reads like a poem. Another is just the word health, repeated over and over in fading ink. You wonder if that counts as intention. You wonder if this is all just medieval manifesting, but then again so is half of modern wellness. Others include little objects, a sliver of bone, a bead, a tooth. Something that once belonged to something else and now belongs to hope. You tie the amulet around your neck and try to walk naturally, like you're not wearing a magical backpack for your soul. No one else seems fazed. A passing monk has 4 amulets, a belt of herbs, and a feather tied to his shoe. You begin to feel underdressed. People believe deeply in the power of these things. You see them pressed into dying hands. You see them hung over cribs and thresholds. You see someone whispering to their charm like it is an old friend. When medicine fails, faith steps in, wearing a tiny cloth pouch and muttering softly in Latin. And for many this is enough. The plague cannot be seen, named, or punched, but it can be warded off, at least symbolically, with the right combination of items and optimism. At night you lie back and feel the charm on your chest. You are not sure if it is helping, but it feels like armour. It feels like effort. It feels like someone tried, and that is not nothing. Then someone brings out a charm with different energy. It smells stronger, looks lumpier. There is something inside that shifts when it moves. The healer says it is powerful. You ask what is in it. They say, a toad. You sit up very slowly. You ask again, because surely you misheard. They smile. No, it is a toad. Dried, sometimes worn whole, sometimes stitched into a little sack. It works, they say, because it is hideous, and the plague is afraid of competition. You decide to investigate this claim very carefully, because if you are going to wear a toad, you would like to meet him first. Toads have a starring role in some later medieval and early modern plague lore and charm traditions, and the logic is both gross and poetic. A toad is associated with poison, with earth, with absorbing badness. So people imagine it can pull sickness out of you like a living filter. You hear talk of dried toads, toad-based preparations, and the general idea that the uglier the ingredient, the stronger the magic. You do not feel comforted. You feel judged by biology, and while you are processing the toad situation, someone says there is a cleaner method. Vinegar. You are shown a pouch. Inside it, something with the unmistakable lumpiness of a taxidermy experiment that went emotionally wrong. It is a dried toad, stitched shut with thread that may or may not be hair. You're told this amulet is powerful. You're told it has been blessed. You are told it will work. The healer speaks with such confidence that you begin to doubt your own memory of science class. You are also told not to ask where the toad came from. You do not. Some versions of the toad cure involve placing the dried toad directly on the chest or abdomen, binding it with cloth, and waiting. Just waiting. The idea is that the toad, being a creature of the earth, will naturally draw poison downward and into itself. It does not scream because it is dead. But emotionally, you feel like it might. You lie still, deeply aware of the fact that a former swamp creature is now your bodyguard. Other preparations are somehow worse. There are salves made with powdered toad. There are tonics that include toad gall or toad ash, which sounds like a wizard's insult but is unfortunately very real. You sip something that tastes like betrayal and smell something that feels like a dare. Your stomach files a complaint. Your modern immune system hides in a corner, humming softly to itself. You wonder, not for the first time, how anyone survived this century. But you also start to see the reasoning. If something is repulsive, maybe it has the power to repel. If something is feared, maybe it can frighten sickness away. The logic is emotional, not chemical. The cure must be as intense as the disease, and nothing is more intense than strapping a desiccated toad to your sternum and hoping for the best. One practitioner even explains the toad's role in symbolic terms. The plague, they say, is a beast. The toad is also a beast, but one who lies in wait, who does not run, who absorbs. You blink slowly. You do not have the energy to argue with metaphors today. There are even folk tales of toads being worn live, held in little net bags, attached to belts, placed near the feet at night so they could slurp illness out through the soles. You imagine your Fitbit trying to count that as steps. You imagine explaining this to your doctor. You do not imagine it twice. The toad, despite all logic, becomes something you are oddly grateful for. It is absurd, it is grotesque, but so is plague. And in a world without clear answers, at least this one is specific. Do this. Wear this. Wait. You glance down at your new amphibian accessory. It is not blinking. Which is good? Probably. You breathe in through your nose and try to forget everything about what is currently pressed to your chest. But relief is fleeting in the medieval world. Because just when you think you cannot be surprised again, someone gently taps your shoulder and says they have another option. It is simple. It is cleansing. It is vinegar. Everywhere. On everything. Forever. Vinegar appears everywhere because it feels active. It stings. It smells sharp. It makes you believe it is doing something. People wash hands, wipe surfaces, and soak cloths, trusting that sourness can fight corruption. You breathe through a vinegar-soaked rag and feel like a salad that has gained consciousness. Still, compared to chickens and toads, vinegar is practically modern. You almost relax. Almost. Then a healer suggests a more fragrant strategy. Roses, herbs, and sweet smells that are supposed to protect your lungs from invisible danger. At first, vinegar seems reasonable, logical even. If something burns your nose and waters your eyes, it must be doing its job. You're handed a cloth that is thoroughly doused and told to tie it around your mouth. It drips. This is fine, they say. This is what protection smells like. You're now an olfactory warrior, armed with acetic acid and pure determination. Soon, you notice vinegar is not just a tool, it is a way of life. Bowls of it rest on windowsills like sour little sentries. Buckets lurk in corners, waiting for their moment. Sponges dangle from belts, soaked and swinging like sour-smelling pendants. Everyone is sniffing. Some people dab it on their temples. Others have developed a kind of casual vinegar baptism. A splash to the wrists, a rub to the neck, a small dramatic sigh. You're living in a world marinated for safety. You see a woman threading vinegar-soaked ribbon through her hair like a warrior princess of plague times. She walks with purpose. Children recoil from her, not because she is scary, but because she smells like ambition and pickling fluid. She nods at you in solidarity. You try to nod back without coughing. There is talk of vinegar not just cleansing the body but the mind. It clears away melancholy, it sharpens focus, it balances the humours. It may also help with bad dreams, wandering thoughts, and the occasional unwise romantic attachment. You're told to clean your shoes with vinegar, to rinse your coins, to dab your pillow. Some people clean their front doors with it, believing sourness repels sickness, or demons, or salesmen. No one is quite sure, but it is best to cover all possibilities. And then someone tells you about Four Thieves vinegar, the luxury model. Vinegar steeped with herbs like rosemary, sage, mint, and whatever else the local healer has not run out of. It is named after a story where four thieves rubbed themselves with the concoction and robbed plague victims without falling ill. You do not know whether this is inspiring or deeply offensive, but you are handed a vial anyway. The instructions are unclear, but the intention is obvious. Wear this, smell this, trust this. You dab it on your neck, your wrists, your temples. It feels cold and bracing and slightly unhinged. Your eyes sting. Your mouth fills with the taste of regret. You try to thank the healer, but the words come out as a polite choking noise. They nod with satisfaction. Yes, they say. It is working. And even though the logic is cloudy, the comfort is real. Vinegar is control. A small acidic ritual you can repeat when everything else feels too large. It becomes your safety blanket in liquid form, sharp, sour, and sacred. You are now mildly flammable but spiritually fortified. Of course, you are warned not to overdo it. One man drank half a cup and claimed to see angels. The angels told him to stop drinking vinegar. You choose to learn from his mistake and remain acidic only on the outside. As the sting fades and the scent lingers, someone offers a softer form of protection, a pouch of petals, a whisper of sweetness in a world that has been very sour. It is time for roses. Herbs are bundled, burned, steeped, carried, and rubbed into skin because plants are one of the few tools medieval people can actually control. Rosemary, sage, lavender, wormwood, garlic. Some are chosen for scent, some for taste, some because someone's grandmother swore by them during a bad winter and lived. You hold a little bundle and inhale, and it is oddly soothing, like aromatherapy with higher stakes. The town smells like a kitchen fighting for its life. And then someone points out the most trusted medical tool of all. Not a plant, not a bird, a calendar. The herbal world is strangely comforting. Unlike chickens, leeches, or cauterizing irons, herbs at least behave. They sit quietly. They smell nice. They do not scream. In a time when most treatments are intense or terrifying or both, holding a bunch of fragrant leaves feels like holding a polite hope. No biting, no burning, just a whisper of help from the garden. You are handed a cloth sachet, stuffed with dried herbs and tied with twine. You are told to keep it close to your face, especially when walking near other people. This is not just good etiquette. This is medicine. The logic is simple. If disease rides in on foul air, then sweet air is your bodyguard. People wear herbs around their necks. They line their windows with them. They hang them from beams and beds and belts. If a space has air in it, it probably has rosemary in it too. One woman carries a pouch of dried thyme sewn into her sleeve. Another has stuffed her shoes with mint to guard from illness rising up through the feet. You are not sure if that is a real danger or just creative foot hygiene, but no one here is taking chances. children wear necklaces of garlic cloves and walk around like tiny apothecaries, the air smells like a monastery garden arguing with a butcher shop. A strong herbal breeze follows everyone. You pass a house that smells like boiled fennel and another that reeks of burnt sage. No one is quite sure which combination works, so they use all of them. You are starting to suspect that the town itself could be used to season soup. There is a rhythm to it. Boil, steep, rub, hang, repeat. You begin to memorize the combinations. Sage for the lungs, thyme for courage, garlic for everything. Always garlic. If it smells powerful enough to make someone leave the room, it is probably a cure. Someone tucks dried marjoram behind your ear like a kiss from a grandmother who believes strongly in preventative measures. Another person gives you a sprig of yarrow and winks, saying it keeps your spirit anchored. You are not sure what that means, but it sounds like something you want. One man swears by basil soaked in beer. Another ties rue to his belt and insists it once saved him from a nosebleed and a tax collector in the same week. You are beginning to suspect that half of medicine is smell and the other half is storytelling. But in the chaos of sickness and superstition, herbs give people something gentle to hold. Something ancient. Something that makes you feel like maybe the world still has a few soft edges. You even start developing preferences. A hint of rosemary over lavender, a dash of mint to cut through the garlic, a bit of mugwort for mystery. You are becoming a connoisseur of medieval air. But herbs, for all their charm, are not the final word. Because illness, you are told, has seasons, and the true expert on when to fear for your life is not a healer or a herb. It is a chart on a wall, a list of saints, the calendar knows. In medieval thought, the heavens matter. The positions of planets and stars are not just pretty, they are instructions. Certain days are good for bloodletting, certain moons are bad for surgery, and certain moments are ideal for doing nothing and blaming Mars. You are told your illness might be connected to the sky, which is both terrifying and strangely relatable, because modern people also blame the universe when they feel off. You check the night air, imagining Saturn judging you. And the astrologer nods solemnly and says, "Yes, this is the moment. It is time for a cleanse." Again. You're taken to someone described only as the learned one, which is never a comforting title. He carries scrolls under one arm and a slightly smug expression under his hood. He asks for your birth date, the time of your first symptom, and which side of the bed you sleep on during full moons. He mutters about Jupiter being in a stubborn house and Mercury doing something rude. You nod politely, as if any of this makes sense, while trying to remember if Mercury being in retrograde is still bad when it is also in Aries. You do not ask. You do not want to sound ignorant to someone who just made a diagnosis using the Big Dipper. The astrologer rolls out a star chart. It looks like a medieval pizza wheel covered in anxiety. He points to symbols with dramatic pauses. Here, he says, is where your spleen becomes emotionally vulnerable. Here is where Venus interferes with your digestion. And this circle here, this is the part where your liver feels judged by the moon. You nod again, mostly because there is incense burning, and you feel slightly lightheaded. It becomes clear that time matters more than symptoms. You might be bleeding from the nose, but if the moon is wrong, no leeches today. You might have a cough that sounds like a haunted bellows, but if Saturn is cranky, they will postpone your treatment until the planets behave. This is not neglect. This is celestial scheduling. You are told Mars governs blood and violence, so any aggressive treatment must avoid Martian days. The moon controls fluids, so if you're experiencing anything moist, the moon gets involved. Mercury is blamed for confusion, trembling, and probably that one time you forgot where you left your spoon. You find yourself thinking that astrology sounds less like medicine and more like a very detailed excuse chart. There is a chart called the Zodiac Man, where parts of the body are assigned to signs. Aries rules the head, Pisces rules the feet. You are shown this diagram and asked to consider if your current pain aligns with your astrological weak points. You try to explain that your shoulder just hurts because someone made you carry firewood and then drilled your skull. They nod wisely. Classic Taurus behavior. After much discussion, it is decided that your current symptoms are due to a bad conjunction between Venus and your humors. The stars are tense, your blood is spicy, and your stomach may be too aligned with Mars. A correction must be made, but not yet. First, you must wait for a better moon. Until then, you are advised to avoid conflict, don't overheat, and maybe sit near a fragrant herb bundle while drinking warm water, infused with rose petals and vague optimism. You do so partly because you are tired, and partly because this is the only doctor who has not suggested setting you on fire. You begin to wonder how people survived all this, and then you remember many did not. Still, there is something comforting in looking up and blaming Saturn. At least no one can argue with the sky. But even the stars are not the final authority, because while the planets may suggest a treatment, there is one force stronger than the heavens in medieval medicine, your body and what you feed it. You are reminded that the celestial map may influence fate, but balance begins at the table. Food is medicine in medieval life, and also a danger. Too much rich food can heat your body. Too much cold food can dampen you. Too much anything can ruin your balance. So you're advised to eat simple meals, avoid certain meats, and fast when sickness comes. It sounds almost healthy until you remember their idea of simple is often bread and thin broth, and not dying. You nibble your meal and think about modern diet trends. At least our influencers do not usually recommend leeches. Usually, then the healer mentions something called a cordial, a drink for your heart. You quickly learn that everything you eat must be approved by the humors. If you are hot and dry, you must avoid hot and dry food. If you are cold and wet, no cucumbers for you. Bananas do not exist yet, but if they did, someone would write a pamphlet about their terrible influence on the spleen. You begin to miss snacks without consequences. Meals feel more like spiritual negotiations than nourishment. You are served warm wine because cold drinks might weaken your inner fire. Your bread is dry. Your soup is suspiciously thin and tastes like someone once thought about a carrot in its presence. Someone suggests you chew fennel seeds after eating to maintain your balance. You chew. You nod. You mourn the idea of dessert. Fasting is encouraged, not just for piety, but because emptying the body is considered spiritually and medically cleansing. At first, this sounds tolerable. Skip a few meals, cleanse the soul, reset the spleen, get back in sync with the stars and your stomach. But medieval fasting does not come with smoothies or cheat days. It comes with rules written by people who also think bloodletting is the height of logic. You hear about black fasts, which include no animal products, no pleasure, and sometimes no food at all. You try to participate and immediately feel like you are preparing for a duel with your own metabolism. The healer checks your pulse and tells you your body is calming down. Your stomach is less convinced. It makes noises that sound like a haunted cave system. Certain foods are assigned personalities. Onions are aggressive. Beans are gassy but grounding. Fish is cooling, unless it is salted, in which case it becomes drying, unless served with vinegar, in which case it might be holy. You're told that eels, while delicious, are too slippery for proper digestion. You decide to stop asking questions. Some days you're allowed meat, other days only lentils. On Fridays, no butter. On saints' days, no joy. And during certain fasts, no dairy, no eggs, and no coping mechanisms. You become very familiar with the texture of sadness wrapped in cabbage. Food is not just sustenance, it is diagnosis. If you crave pears, maybe your spleen is sulking. If you dream of garlic, maybe your bile is planning a rebellion. Hunger itself is suspect. Too little appetite means melancholy. Too much means corruption. A balanced eater is a balanced soul. You look at your piece of stale bread and try to radiate harmony. Still, there is something calming in the structure of it all. You eat slowly. You notice flavors. You learn to appreciate soup as a concept, even if it mostly tastes like disappointment and wet lint. And when you finish, you feel not full, but righteous. That, apparently, is the point. Then, just as your stomach begins composing a polite complaint letter to your brain, someone places a small cup in your hand. A drink for your heart, they say. A cordial, made of herbs, honey, spices, and faith. You're not sure what it will do, but at this point a little medieval cocktail sounds like emotional support in liquid form. Cordials are warm, spiced drinks meant to strengthen the heart and lift the spirit. Because medieval medicine takes your mood seriously in a way that is almost sweet. Fear is seen as dangerous. Sadness is seen as physically harmful. A troubled mind can stir your humours into a soap opera, and no one wants that. So they want you cheerful, warm, and gently buzzed. You're told that laughter is medicine, but so is nutmeg steeped in wine. You sip something with honey and cinnamon, and maybe a little opiate, and you begin to understand why this was popular. It is calming. It is numbing. It is basically medieval self-care in a cup. No one calls it alcohol. They call it strengthening. They call it comforting. They say it will restore your vital spirits, like you're a haunted doll trying to get her groove back. These drinks come in bottles with embossed seals, wax stoppers, and the confident posture of something passed down from monks. Some are served hot. Some are aged in ceramic jugs the size of toddlers. Some are poured from crystal flasks that make you feel like a sick little duchess. They are made with herbs like angelica, cinnamon, anise, cardamom, and cloves, plus whatever was trending in plague diaries at the time. You take another sip and feel your limbs unwind like tired rope. It is sweet. Too sweet. But in a time when most food tastes like boiled leather or accidentally smoked dirt, this is a delight. Even if it is also a mild sedative, or a laxative, or both, you do not ask. The important thing is that someone looked at you and thought, what this person needs is to be swaddled in cloves and forget where they are for an hour. Cordials are offered for fainting, melancholy, fevers, palpitations, stomach trouble, night terrors, sudden weeping, marital disappointment, and the general feeling of being too aware of your own mortality. There is a cordial for heartbreak, a cordial for headaches, a cordial for when your neighbour's goat has been staring at you wrong. Every household has a recipe. Some include rosewater and dried citrus peel. Some are thick with honey. One has powdered unicorn horn. You're assured it is symbolic. Probably. The dosage is up to you. Some people sip reverently, like it's church. Others drink like they're trying to erase a memory. You begin to suspect that many ailments in this century are not so much cured as kindly muffled. The cordial does not fix your problem. It just makes the problem feel like it belongs to someone across the room. There is even a theory that cordials bring harmony to your humours, that they warm the cold, cool the hot, cheer the melancholic, and charm the phlegmatic. That they tell your insides gently but firmly to behave. You have questions, many questions, but the cordial is already doing its job, which is to take those questions and tuck them into bed. You sit quietly in a low wooden chair, wrapped in a wool blanket that smells like lavender and medieval laundry. Your heartbeat is slow and syrupy. A woman nearby is having her pulse checked while telling a story about a duck. Somewhere in the next room, someone sneezes in Latin. You feel like a half-melted candle in a very cozy crypt. And then someone leans in. They have that look. The look that says, "What I am about to tell you is normal here, but not where you came from." They mention something rare, ancient, a cure not made from herbs or wine, a cure made from the human body. Yes, really. By the later medieval period, and especially into the centuries after, some European remedies included substances called mumia, connected at first to medicinal bitumen and later to something far more theatrical and disturbing, powdered human remains. Specifically, powdered Egyptian mummies. The logic is grim but simple. If something lasted for 1,000 years, it must contain power, strength, endurance, durability in spice form. So people believed that consuming it could pass some of that fortitude onto them. Like borrowing toughness from a corpse that had done the hard work of staying intact. You do not feel tougher. You feel like you need a moral rinse. But there is no time for reflection because the jar has arrived. It is unremarkable at first glance, just a squat container sealed with wax and mystery. But when opened, it releases a smell that can only be described as ancient and judgmental. Dust, cloves, wood smoke, maybe a little camel stable, and something that feels like it should stay buried. The room falls respectfully silent. You are told this is high-quality mumia, carefully sourced, authenticated by someone with a beard and confidence. The powder is passed reverently from hand to hand, like a holy object or a cursed seasoning. You try not to think about who this used to be. You try not to think about how many people had to agree this was a good idea. There is a long explanation about the curative properties: headaches, bleeding, coughs, weakness, melancholy, general lack of pep. The list grows, as it always does, until you are wondering if this powder will also fix your debt and your relationship with your father. In its final form, mumia is ground fine and mixed with honey, wine, or egg white, sometimes applied to wounds, sometimes taken internally, sometimes both, just to make sure. You're handed a cordial with a little of the powder stirred in, and you sip it cautiously. It coats your mouth with the unmistakable flavour of regret and dusty basement. The people around you nod. You have done something noble, or at least expensive. You're assured it was used by kings and noblemen, which raises new questions. Was this really medicine, or just a flex? A way to say, look what I can afford to swallow. Some recipes are real mummy. Some are just flavoured pitch. Some are fake entirely. made from crushed bark or resin with a good story. Honestly, you are not sure which is worse. The real deal is morally upsetting. The fake stuff is still somehow disappointing. The truth is, mumia is not just a treatment. It is a conclusion. A final act in the long performance of medieval medical logic. If plants do not work, try animals. If animals do not work, try saints. If saints disappoint, try toads, stars, or smoke. And if none of that helps, eat a preserved human, preferably one with a nice backstory. It is healing as narrative, health as myth. You are less a patient now than a participant in a centuries-long improv game no one is quite sure how to end. And yet, even as you consider faking your own death to avoid another dose, you feel something close to awe, not healing, not peace, just the quiet shock of realizing that people really did this, and meant it, and charged extra. You stand up feeling dusty on the inside. You are ready to say goodbye to medieval medicine. But the apothecary leans closer, eyes twinkling. He has one more option for you. A universal cure. Again, just in case. In a world without modern testing, a cure that promises a lot becomes a kind of comfort object. You see it in the way people talk, the way they buy, the way they share tips like secret hacks whispered over fences or market stalls. Someone insists this powder works for fever, swelling, sadness, and bad dreams. Someone else swears by a syrup that cured their uncle's cough, their aunt's foot rash, and also improved the harvest. You nod politely, because arguing is tiring, and you are low on blood. You're shown yet another remedy, wrapped in waxed cloth and reverence. It smells like dust and cloves and marketing. The seller tells you it was blessed by a monk, stirred by a widow, aged in moonlight, and stored in a box made from reclaimed virtue. You are told it is strong, too strong maybe, so just a pinch, but also take it regularly, or as needed, or not at all. It depends. You begin to suspect that what matters most is not the substance, but the story. Each remedy has a story. This one saved a bishop. That one calmed a goat. Another is good for women, men, and horses. Someone swears by a yellow tincture once used on a king's finger. Someone else claims a blue stone once cooled a dog so thoroughly it never barked again. You hear tales of miracle herbs that glow in moonlight and waters blessed by passing birds. No one knows what is in them, and it does not seem to matter. The magic is its a possibility. That maybe this time the cure will stick. That maybe this time you will not need another one. You sip a cordial while someone rubs a waxy balm onto your temples. You chew a leaf you were told not to swallow and spit out a seed into a spoon blessed by someone's aunt. The logic is not in the ingredients. It is in the layering, the stacking of hope, like wrapping your illness in soft cloth until it decides to give up and leave. At some point you're handed a charm, a cordial, and a powder all at once. You take them like a polite guest collecting souvenirs from a very specific fever dream, and with each offering comes a look, a hopeful look, as if healing might depend not just on taking the cure, but believing in the person who gave it to you, as if being seen, touched, remembered, and cared for is part of the treatment plan, and perhaps it is. You start to feel the soft weight of exhaustion, not just from sickness, but from constant treatment. From being told to cheer up, purge, bleed, sniff, bathe, pray, sweat, fast, sip, rub, burn, chant, balance your internal soup while walking backwards under a hopeful moon. The human body was never meant to host this many experiments in one lifetime. You lie down. Not because anyone told you to, but because gravity has opinions. Your limbs are holding a kind of memory that medicine cannot touch. Your breath is steady but cautious, like it is waiting to see what comes next. After all the jars, blades, birds, stars, and smoke, you find yourself with the most human medicine of all. A fire crackling, a blanket pulled up, a friend or family member sitting nearby, telling you to breathe slowly and not give up. Medieval people had many cures that missed the mark, but they also had care. They brought broths, they kept watch, they shared prayers and stories, they tried. Even when the theory was wrong, the effort was real. They did not always understand what caused sickness, but they understood what it looked like. A face pale with fever, a body too tired to sit up, eyes that could not focus, and so they leaned on the tools they did have. They warmed bricks in the fire and wrapped them in cloth to tuck near your feet. They sang familiar hymns, or recited stories they half remembered, or just held your hand and watched for signs that you might wake. They adjusted pillows with the tenderness of someone placing hope in cotton. They dipped cloth into cool water and laid it across your brow with the gravity of a sacred rite. They sat up through the night even when nothing could be done, because something could still be felt, that you mattered, that someone stayed. There were no beeping machines, no charts, no fluorescent lights, just the slow, imperfect rhythm of human care. It was not flashy. It did not promise instant results. It would never make it onto the shelf next to powdered Viper or Saint Sweat syrup. But it lasted, sometimes longer than the patient, sometimes through generations. When someone recovered, they credited the theriac or the charm or the saint. But often, it was soup and sleep and being watched over by someone who remembered your favourite lullaby. It was the cousin who sat beside your bed chewing garlic so the plague wouldn't choose them next. It was the mother who fasted for your sake, the neighbour who came in with a jug of clean water and no expectations. There is something ancient in that kind of presence, something quietly radical. Because in a time when sickness was terrifying and often misunderstood, showing up was brave. Holding someone's hand was defiance against the darkness. Every blanket tucked in was a line of defence. Every whispered story was a way to keep the soul anchored to the body a little longer. So you lie still now, listening to the creak of the cottage, the shifting logs in the fire, the soft breathing of someone who refuses to leave your side. No more jars, no more syrups, just stillness, just being allowed to rest without being asked to bleed, purge, or swallow something that smells like old leather and regret. And for the first time you feel the faint flicker of strength returning, not dramatic, not a miracle, just a little less pain, a little more calm, the kind that creeps in quietly when no one is demanding anything from you. The kind that comes when someone believes you are still worth caring for, even when the cures have run out. Maybe this was always the true medicine, not the herbs, not the relics, not the ritual drilling or incense smoke, but the warmth of another human being saying, "You are not alone in this. You are here, and I am here, and that is enough for now." And just as you let yourself drift into that soft quiet, someone knocks at the door. They say a traveller has arrived with new cures from another region, and you think to yourself, here we go again,